Hello there, I am Scott Telek, author of The Swithin, the Arthurian book series telling the complete saga of King Arthur across 25 novels. We're continuing our guided reading of Sir Thomas Malory's Morte d'Arthur today, and Arthur just had his first battle and now he's facing some more, so let's see how that plays out. So after the feast and journey, King Arthur drew him unto London, and so by the counsel of Merlin, the king let call his barons to council. For Merlin had told the king that the 6 kings that made war on him would in all haste be revenged on him and his lands. Therefore the king asked counsel of them all. They could no counsel give, but said that they were big enough. You say well, said Arthur. I thank you for your good courage, but will all that loveth me speak with Merlin? You know well that he's done much for me, and he knows many things, and when he's before you, I would that you prayed him heartily of his best advice. All the barons said they would pray him and desire him. So Merlin was sent for, and fair desired of all the barons to give them the best counsel. I shall say you, said Merlin, I warn you all, your enemies are passing strong for you, and they are good men of arms as be alive. And by this time they have gotten to them 4 kings more, and a mighty duke. And unless that our king have more chivalry with him than he may make within the bounds of his own realm, and he fight with them in battle, he shall be overcome and slain. Okay, so King Arthur picks up and goes from Caerleon to London. Here's a sort of strange and tricky section. Merlin tells Arthur that the 6 kings that have made war on him are still angry and will be avenged on him and his lands. Arthur sends for his barons, that is, his own advisors, and they say, nah, you're fine, your army's big enough. And then Arthur says, well, will you speak to Merlin? He's given me a lot of good advice. So he sort of has to convince his advisors to listen to Merlin. And then they go and send for Merlin, although, as far as we know, he never went away. So Merlin comes and says Arthur's enemies are very strong, and the 6 kings against him have been joined by 5 more, for a total of 11. And he says that unless Arthur can find some allies fast, he'll be defeated. Okay, let's hear more. What were best to do in this case, said all the barons. I shall tell you, said Merlin, my advice. There are 2 brothers beyond the sea, and they be kings both, and marvellous good men of their hands. And one is called King Ban of Benwick, and the other called King Bors of Gaul, that is, France. And on these 2 kings warreth a mighty man of men, the King Claudas, and striveth with them for a castle, and great war is between them. But this Claudas is so mighty of goods, whereof he gets good knights, that puts these 2 kings most part to the worse. Wherefore this is my counsel, that our king and sovereign lord send unto the kings Ban and Bors by 2 trusty knights, with letters well devised, that they will come and see King Arthur and his court, and so help him in his wars, that he will be sworn unto them to help them in their wars against King Claudas. Now what say you unto this counsel, said Merlin. That is well counselled, said the king and all the barons. Right so, in all haste were ordained 2 knights to go and take the message to the 2 kings. So were made letters in the pleasant wise, according to the king's desire. Okay, now, crucial development. Merlin advises Arthur to send for 2 brother kings, King Ban and King Bors. Now, these 2 have a fairly small role in Morte d'Arthur, but have a huge, huge role in the overall saga. That is, in the parts that Malory left out. And we're going to be discussing those, because even though they were left out of this, they still have a humongous influence over the whole tale. Okay, remember back in video 2, the stuff that happened before Morte d'Arthur started. We talked about how the story begins right after the crucifixion of Christ and talks about all the generations and how the Holy Grail got to Britain. King Ban and King Bors are descendants of the family that were originally best buddies with Jesus himself, and they are in Gaul, which is France. Now I'll give you a little sneak preview. Sir Lancelot, the famous knight who goes on to have an affair with Arthur's wife Guinevere, is a descendant of King Ban. So he is in the family that is in the line of the disciples of Christ. Arthur is in the family of Constantine, a Celtic family that originated in Rome. So Arthur originates in Britain while Lancelot is closely tied to Christ. And this is going to become crucially important later when the whole kingdom splits along these family lines. And I'll give you a little insight into why this happens. You see, the Arthur stories were early Celtic myths and such, and they have a lot of killing and bloodshed and not a lot of admirable morality. That was from the years 500 to 1100. So beginning in the 1200s, the story was taken over and written down by Christian monks. And they added the whole Christian element, making what was a serving dish into the Holy Grail, shifting the hero of the story from earthy, grungy Arthur to pious and divine Lancelot, and more importantly, Lancelot's morally peerless son Galahad. And adding the quest for the Holy Grail, in which Arthur's world gets the definitive thumbs down from God. Alright, let's bring it back to where we are. Now you also remember our discussion of King Claudius, who was trying to take over Gaul back in Uther's time, and Uther went over and beat him back. Well, now that Uther's gone, Claudius is trying to take over Gaul again, specifically the kingdoms of King Ban and King Bors. So just keep all this in mind because we're going to come back to it. Ulfius and Brastias were made the messengers, and so rode forth well-horsed and well-armed, as the guise was in that time, and so passed the sea and rode toward the city of Benwick. And there besides were 8 knights that espied them, and at a straight passage they met with Ulfius and Brastias, and would have taken them prisoners. So they prayed them that they might pass, for they were messengers unto King Ban and Bors, sent from King Arthur. Therefore, said the 8 knights, you shall die or be prisoners, for we are knights of King Claudius. And therewith 2 of them dressed their spears, and Ulfius and Brastias dressed their spears, and ran together with great force. And Claudius's knights broke their spears, and 2 knights were borne out of their saddles to the earth, and so left them lying, and rode on their ways. And the other 6 knights rode afore to a passage to meet with them again. And so Ulfius and Brastias smote the other 2 down, and so passed on their ways. And at the 4th passage they met 2 for 2, and both were laid unto the earth. For there was none of the 8 knights, but he was sore hurt or bruised. And when they came to Benwick, it was fortune that there were both kings, Ban and Bors. And when it was told the kings that there were come messengers, there was sent unto them 2 knights of worship, one called Lionces, lord of the country of Paern, and Sir Phariance, a worshipful knight. Anon they asked from whence they came, and they said from King Arthur, king of England. So they took them in their arms and made great joy of each other. But anon, as the 2 kings knew they were messengers of Arthur's, there was no tarrying, but forthwith they spoke with the knights, and welcomed them in the faithfullest wise, and said they were most welcome unto them before all the kings living. And therewith they kissed the letters and delivered them. And when Ban and Bors understood the letters, then they were more welcome than they were before. And after the haste of the letters they gave them this answer, that they would fulfill the desire of King Arthur's writing, and Ulfius and Brastias might tarry there as long as they would, having such cheer as might be made of them in those marches. Then Ulfius and Brastias told the king of the adventure at their passages with the 8 knights. Ha! Said Ban and Bors, they were my good friends. I would I had known of them, they should not have escaped. So Ulfius and Brastias had good cheer and great gifts, as much as they might bear away, and had their answer by mouth and by writing that the 2 kings would come to King Arthur in all the haste that they might. Okay, so here's a little mini adventure that Malory imported from the Vulgate cycle because it's such a fun little story. The thing is, if you ask me, Malory's telling leaves out all the details that make the story fun. Also, I'll tell you up front, Malory's known to like battles and feats of swordplay, and so he plays those up quite a lot. So Ulfius and Brastias are on their way to request the help of King Ban and King Bors when they encounter 8 knights of King Claudius. The knights of Claudius say they are guarding the roads and will take the horses of Ulfius and Brastias as payment of getting through. Ulfius and Brastias show them who are the better knights, but in this telling it's just a little bland. What makes it fun in the longer telling is Ulfius calling one of the other knights a loud boasting blockhead, and Brastias impaling one of the knights with a lance and then saying, "Now we give you leave to guard the roads." In Le Morte d'Arthur, when Ban and Bors say the knights they encountered are good friends of theirs, they're actually just being sarcastic. So Ulfius and Brastias go back and tell King Arthur that the kings are coming to help. So the kings are coming for Hallowmas, which is at the beginning of November, and Arthur decides he's going to have a big tournament to thank them and celebrate their coming. And the last paragraph here just talks about who served in the banquet and then gets into who was on horseback during the tournament. Alright, that's it for now. We'll pick up in chapter 11 where we start to have a humongous battle.